Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Digging Deeper moment number 237. The purpose of our Digging Deeper moments is to take God's Word to God's world, and we are so glad that you've joined us. Tonight, we will finish our study in the first scroll of Isaiah and hope by now you can see just how deep and rich this first scroll really is. Now, often when Christians read the book of Isaiah, they're looking for the prophecies which speak about Jesus, and they're certainly there, as well as we'll see tonight. But before we get into these prophecies, I wanted to lay a foundation for understanding the book of Isaiah as a whole, because the prophecies of Isaiah and about Jesus fit into a biblical context, and they're even more profound within that context than when they are outside of that context. Now, there are several messianic prophecies found in Isaiah's first scroll, chapters 1 through 12. There are many more in the rest of the book of Isaiah, but our study's been on the first scroll. Also, there are several that were considered to be messianic in the Jewish Targums. The Targums are translations and interpretations of the biblical text, which developed later during the exile period. And we're not going to focus on them, but I am going to mention those at the end. The first is found in Isaiah 2, 1 through 4, which is Isaiah's second message. It speaks of Jesus' second coming, not his first. It predicts that the Messiah will bring peace to the nations, and obviously that has not happened yet. And Isaiah 2:4 says, "He shall judge between the nations and rebuke many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." Boy, that's going to be a glorious day. Jesus alludes to this in Matthew chapter 25, verse 31, when it says, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him," this is his second coming, "then he will sit on the throne of his glory, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats." And so we want you to see how Isaiah's prophecy is connected to things said in the Old Testament with the New Testament, but there's still a future fulfillment of this prophecy. The second messianic text is found in Isaiah's fourth message, that is in Isaiah 7:14, and it speaks of Jesus' miraculous virgin birth at his first coming. It says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and you shall call his name Emmanuel." Matthew, in his gospel, quotes this verse in chapter 1, verse 23 of the book of Matthew, when speaking of the virgin birth of Christ and the story of Mary. It says in verse 23, "Behold, the virgin shall be with child." The angel had just appeared to Mary and told her what was going to happen. And Joseph is thinking about whether this story is true or not. The angel appears to him and says, "Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which is translated God with us, a direct reference to the book of Isaiah. The third messianic prophecy speaks of Jesus' first coming, but takes us to his second coming in chapter Isaiah 9 through 6, chapter 9, verse 6 and 7, when it says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name is called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end. Upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this." Now, this one would take a couple of digging deeper moments and maybe a couple series to unpack. So for now, let's just speak of the increase of the Messiah's government. In the book of Matthew, chapter 13, Jesus speaks parables of the kingdom, which talk about the increase of his kingdom, the increase of his government. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven," notice he's speaking of a kingdom, "is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least or the smallest of all the seeds, but when it is grown, is greater than the herbs, and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches." The continual growth of the kingdom, the continual growth of the government and rulership of God's kingdom is what's expressed by both Isaiah and Jesus. A fourth messianic text is found in chapter 11, verse 1 through 9, and it also speaks of Jesus' first and his second coming. It says, "There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, a branch shall grow out of its roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight is in the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, his word, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt of his loins, and faithfulness the belt of his waist. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf and the young lion, and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. The young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play on the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put forth his hand in the viper's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea." The essence of this prophecy, which would take weeks to unpack, is that the Messiah will bring justice and peace to the earth. Many scholars believe this speaks of the millennial reign of Christ, which is a 1,000-year period in which there will be no sickness, death, or evil, because Christ shall rule and reign. And while time does not permit me to unpack that or go forth on that, it does give us we do see a portrait of the Messiah beginning to emerge. In chapters 2, 1 through 4, the Messiah will bring peace and elevate Jerusalem at his second coming. In chapter 7, verse 14, the Messiah will be born of a virgin, which he was. In chapter 9, verse 6 and 7, the Messiah will sit upon the throne of David, and the increase of his government will continue, which it has. The kingdom will continue to build. In chapter 11, verses 1 through 10, the Messiah would bring justice and peace at both his first and second comings. Now, quickly, there are other texts in Isaiah's first scroll that the rabbinic leaders of Israel held to be messianic. Alfred Edersheim lists them in his Appendix 9 of his book, The Life and Time of Jesus Messiah. They're going to be listed for you right here on the screen, and you can take a look at them at your leisure. This concludes our study, however, of Isaiah's first scroll, and next week we'll begin a new holiday series of Digging Deeper messages. If this lesson's helped you, please share it with a friend, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, or check out our live podcast on either Apple or Spotify. And hey, if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please take a moment to do that. It will help us greatly. I hope to see you next week.